Right, here we are. So, hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Healing Conversations. My name is Einav Avni. What am I? I'm an alignment coach and I'm an energy healer, and I work as Untangled Healing. So now you have all the background about me. And the podcast is all about natural healing, alternative healings, and bringing the message of knowledge and hope to people who needs to hear it. So let's get started. Today in the studio with me, I have Charisse Sisou. Charisse, so lovely to have you here. Welcome.
My
So
pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, Einav.
wonderful. I am really excited about our conversation, and we titled it, or you titled it, "Trust Your Wise Body to Heal." Tell me everything. Where do we start?
Where do we start? Well, I guess what I'll ask is, you mean in terms of the title, "Trust Your Body to Heal,"
Do you know what?
or did
We
you
can.
want me to say who I am? Like, where
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Let's go with whatever feels better. Tell us a little bit about you. Absolutely. Let's start there.
Sure, sure. So, Charisse Sisou, host of Wise Body, Ancient Soul podcast, and author, da da da, blah blah blah. But my background is kind of unusual. I'm a dancer and a writer, and so I was a professional belly dancer for 10 years. I've been a lifelong dancer. Like, I started dancing when I was, yay high in ballet, and kind of like danced off and on all throughout my life, and then really rediscovered it as an adult. But what was powerful about rediscovering it as an adult is I really learned how to own my body from the outside in. Like, we're born knowing it, and then we learn how to we learn to stop trusting ourselves. We learn to treat our bodies as, especially women, but I would say all of us, nowadays are really taught to treat our bodies like ongoing projects and not that sort of sacred partner through life that I believe the body is. I like to use Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes's term. She calls your body your loyal consort, and that it makes so much sense to me. Like, with you from your first breath to your last breath. For me, the body is the soul, physically focused. There is no separation. Mind, body, spirit is kind of like redundant, right? And when you start to, for me, when I started to realize that, um, I could affect so much change, I could affect so much transformation and healing by how I treated my body. Um, yeah, I'll just end there. And then, in terms of writer, I've also been a writer my whole life. I'm the author of Shameless, Unleash Your Message, Impact and Power, which is basically taking what I learned as a belly dancer and applying it to my work as a marketing content writer. So, but yeah, that's a little bit about me. So now you've got my background and my perspective, where I'm coming from.
Amazing. And so you said that you found out, you discovered that anything that you can impact and change so much just by paying attention to your body. How did that come about? What was that like?
Oh, wow. Well, it really, oh my gosh. What I want to say is it started with my first performance, or the first time I hopped into class. So when I jumped into belly dance class, I was not thinking that I was going to end up being, a nationally award winning belly dancer. Like, that was the farthest thing from my mind. I was a mom with two young kids, and I just wanted some time for myself, right? And it was something that I always wanted to try, and I'd never dared to hop into a class. And then I finally found one close by. And the first thing that happened was I jump into this class and I start dancing, and I was like, "Oh my gosh." I had this, like, it just felt like my body was made for the dance, right? Which in and of itself was very healing, because I grew up in the ballet world. So, I was, like I danced ballet, like the European ballet for years and years. And then once I hit puberty, which was like 11, 12 years old, and I just had like teeny tiny little hips and like the teeniest, I just had my little training bra. But it was enough that I was no longer that like ideal um, ballet form. And so my teachers just stopped paying attention to me.
Yes.
And I felt invisible in class. And so it was such a profound healing just of that, of feeling like, oh, this here's the dance that honors the whole body. It's very, very old. It goes way back. It's and especially, I would say this is not limited to women because some of my best and most profound teachers are male, actually. Which is yes, there are men belly dancers, believe it or
Mm,
not, and
yes.
but this very feminine dance form really helped to heal this idea that somehow my body wasn't right or wasn't good enough to
Mm,
move, and so that was like step number one. So it was this kind of like step by step reintroduction to embracing my body and feeling at home in it. And it was really I had to like it would very often happen this way where I would, like, feel it. I'd feel it in the body and be like, and then it would be like, "Okay, now you've gotta figure it out, Charisse." Like, I would have that sort of intuitive or just, like, gift of an experience, like jumping into class, and then this is very common for us, then we go right up into our heads and we start overthinking things, right? So, it took me time to, like, get back to that feeling of, like, yes, like, at home in my body, and same thing with the performance. My
mm,
very first performance, I was like, the music was dancing me. It was so I was so present. It was almost like an out of body experience. I don't know how to explain that, but my brain was totally out of the way. Everything I'd practiced, gone out. And instead, just however my body wanted to move and however the music wanted to move was coming through me. It was an incredibly profound experience. And
mm,
then I spent the next 2 years trying to replicate that experience because then I got into, "Am I good enough? Is this" you know, "Do I is my butt too big for this dance?" Blah, 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 all the things, that we tell ourselves. I had to or I got to, let me rephrase. I got to really wade through and release one by one, and when I really realized that my presence was enough, that me just showing up on stage, I
mm,
didn't even have to move a muscle, but just knowing that I was enough and just standing there was such a profound shift. That was when I realized that that was the year that I won that national competition. It was because I was so at home in my body and just really got it that I don't have to be something more. I don't have to try to be something other than who or what I am because I mean that's it, right? That was it right there. So it was a really profound lesson. And, it wasn't just about winning the competition, like that journey. Um, I mean, it helped me to be a better mother. It healed a lot of things in my body and also gave me the courage and the confidence to leave a marriage that was really not great for either one of us in the, um, but, I was scared to leave before then. And then it really helped me to honor my own desires and my own truth and really take a stand for that. So it was profound. It was profound on just on so many levels.
and I like that because so many of us, it's exactly like you said, right? We live in our head. We everything is in our head. All of the fears, and we listen to them, and we believe them, and we allow them to stop us and to hold us back. And this experience that you are describing actually to dial it all the way down to zero, so that your thinking mind was not even present on that stage. This is definitely
Mm.
something to to aspire to, and wanting to go back and replicate, like you say. um, I imagine that there is a lot of freedom in that moment, And like you say, and I am curious about that, because it's the lessons, right? It's the insights that you're getting from when all of a sudden there's no noise. Then you're starting to pay
No
attention to the
noise.
quiet. So
Right.
what are the kind what where do you go from there, other
Where
than
do
the
I go
wonderful
from?
things that you, yeah, other than the things that you already mentioned, like, having the courage to live your marriage, and um
Mhm.
yeah,
Oh my
what next?
gosh. Like, where do I get started, right? Because, um, oh my goodness. Well, I like many people, I had some challenges in my childhood. Some folks that, I felt had really hurt me, and, um like that sort of coming home to myself, well, there's a couple things that drop in as you were talking, right? It
Mhm.
really felt like a homecoming, this like coming back into myself, because all that stuff that's like, the head stuff is not even like the more I really kind of unpacked it, the more I was like, it's not even me. Like it's not even us, right? It
Mm,
is it might be social stuff, it might be something that a well-intentioned parent, said, and that just lodged in there, right?
mm,
Or, oh my gosh, like I remember being a little kid, my mom was a visiting nurse, and we were at one of her patients' homes, an elderly woman, and she looked at me and she was like, I think in her mind this was a compliment or maybe not. I'm not sure. But like she looked at me and I couldn't have been more than like, I don't know, 11 or 12. And she was like, "Well, she's not beautiful, but you watch out for that one." Right? And I was like, first of all, I didn't know what she meant, but what I did feel was like it wasn't great.
mm,
And that, like, I wasn't beautiful, you know? And, uh, and that just lodged under my skin, right?
mm,
And it became like a thing until I was able to just like, "Oh, okay." So this coming home to ourselves, the more that we come home to ourselves, the more we can see that the little voices, or that they're really like, I like a term I've come to use is like outside interference with our
mm,
truth, right? And our truth is like it's unique to us, but it's also connected to all that is, I feel, because when we're really at home there, when we're really in our truth, like it is a truth that honors everyone else's truth. It is as they say in native traditions, like for the highest good of all and harm to none. You know what I mean?
mm,
It's really that place. Like when we peel back all that outside interference and come back to like that pristine heart with which we're born, and that's always there and that we can always tap into. Because otherwise, how do we know? Right? How do we know like what's just outside interference and what's really us? So, and I do have tools for accessing that. But I mean, where do we go from there? Like I said, I healed a lot of, it was step one and then some of healing a lot of childhood trauma. Um, releasing and moving forward, forgiving people that, like, why hold on to stuff that it's not harming the other person, it's just harming me when I hold on to it. Do you know what I mean? And like impacting e how I interact with the world. So, yeah, it was a lot of things, a lot of
mm.
things. Yeah.
I mean, it resonates, everything that you're saying, and there's a couple of things that come up for me. First of all, I once read this book. It was something about Tao. I think, and the guy said he went to this silence retreat or something, and maybe once a day, or maybe it was once a week, they were allowed to go to the guru and share something and ask her a question, or really use her wisdom to move forward in whatever was
Mm.
stuck in their mind as they were going through the silence retreat. And And he said that as the I guess the week was progressing, it could have been a day. He was just constantly thinking, what do I want to share? What do I want to ask? What do I, I have such little time with this guru. How do I make it count? And and he was kind of this one. Maybe I'll ask this one. Maybe this one. It was really toying with this thing, and then finally, the day arrived, and he was standing outside the door, and this wonderful wise voice invited him to walk in, and he said that as he stood there in front of this guru, and she said, what do you have to report?
Hmm.
And he was like, nothing. And he said that in that moment he really understood that nothing mattered, that nothing mattered, really, whatever he was trying to come up with didn't matter, because it was just noise. Again, the word noise again, it was just noise in his head.
Mm.
And so he said that for him that was the most profound moment, because he really understood how much there is this outside invitation to mess with your head, and to actually make you feel so insecure, and all of that.
Right.
And 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 when you were talking about that, I was just thinking again, about my clients, and people I'm in conversations with, and how you manage to take it and hold on to that. Whereas a lot of people that I'm in conversations with, they're really, they aim for that, and
Mm.
they don't know how to do it, and how to bring it back on demand, and how to stay in that place where they understand that actually there is no limits. There are no limits. Whatever they want, they can do, they can achieve, as long as they stop listening to the wrong voice. So I'm curious. I know that you said that there's a book that you've written, and there's some exercises
Mhm.
there. So maybe
Yeah.
maybe share with us a little bit about that. And
Yeah. Well, and I'm just thinking about the book itself and just well, so it takes practice, right? And it's not like, of course, well, as well as I do that this is an ongoing process. It's an ongoing practice. And so there is a level of commitment and simply deciding, like, all right, okay, like the outside voices, they had their run. Like, I'm done, right? Now, that's not to say that they won't occasionally creep in, or you'll find yourself, especially if it's something activating, right? Something where maybe you have like a tender spot. It hits a spot that's kind of ouchy for you. And, that voice will just pop right back in like, "Meow, meow, 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 meow," and you can tell because it has that kind of wheedly, it doesn't sound like the voice of the sage calling you in, to, "Oh, what do you have to report?" It'll be like, "Yeah, they did like her thing better, didn't they?" Or whatever. Like it'll be something stupid like that. And you're like, that's not me. And so it's like what I've gotten better at is as soon as that comes in, it's like, all right, how do I come back to myself? And I mean, one of the simplest ways, I mean, it sounds, we've heard it so often that it almost sounds trite, but breathing, you know, in through the nose, out through the mouth, and just really focusing on gratitude and trust, that's become one of my, I mean, daily practices, right? Even just if I'm not quite feeling myself, or I'm not kind of, or I'm feeling a little off, a little cranky. Of course, the first things I check, did I get enough rest? Am I nourished? Right? All the ways. Because this too, like that outside interference becomes stronger when we are depleted. So, one of the first things that you want to ask yourself, am I depleted in any way? Right? Am I a little tired? Could I use a little snooze? You know, could I use some fresh air? Could I put my feet on the ground? But yeah, I like Shameless. I did not. It's so funny. When I wrote this book, my friend likes to tease me, and she was like, "You pooped that book out in like 3 weeks," which is not entirely true, but it did come out really fast because it was like stuff that I'd been talking about, writing about, and practicing for a long time. So it just kind of like felt really seamless. And, but one of the things that I do is like each chapter, it kind of ends with a practice or a prompt or something that I used to, move past, we'll just continue to call them voices, or maybe the stuck points,
Mm.
like those ouchy points where they can become kind of like these crystalline prisons of themselves. Like, I talk a lot to my book, Shameless. Ooh, let me put it in the camera. All right. So Shameless, Unleash Your Message, Impact, and Power. It's so funny because at the time that I wrote it, I was working with a business coach, and they were like, you need to tie it to your business, which is my copy and content agency. So it's technically a marketing book, but here's the thing. It is unlike any book that you will any marketing book ever. It's not about like tactics. It's all about the stuff behind the scenes, because what I learned in the marketing world is exactly what I learned in the belly dance world, which is it's what our inner reality is. That's what translates. Not any, didn't matter what costume I was wearing. It doesn't matter what platform you're posting on Instagram, X, blah, blah, blah. What matters is, are you yourself when you show up, right? So, speaking of those kind of like crystalline prisons, I had like one memory in particular that was kind of like not even like my worst memory. That's what's so funny about it. Like, it wasn't even like the worst thing that had ever happened to me, but it was one that my psyche kept returning to, like, see, that's why you can't be out there. That's why you can't let people see you, blah, 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 blah. And
Mm.
um, so I went through different iterations, and I share them in my book of, unpacking. So if you or if anyone in your audience can relate, of just having that memory, it because it'll be like, oh, this again. Like, it just keeps coming up. I would, like, every time I would go to personal development something, and they'd be like, write about a such and such, and it would just, there it was, old and hairy and like still around. I was like, great. And so I share some different practices. One of them, I just started by writing a letter to that child that I was at, the age that I was when that happened, right? And in the process of that, just kind of like, what might I have wanted to know at that time, or was kind of like like an opportunity to mother yourself or parent yourself. And it was actually really profound, because what started as a letter, like, hey, this wasn't your fault. I love you. You're safe now. Like, all the things that, to help comfort that little girl that I was. But in the course of writing the letter, I could picture her like scared and alone. And I took her on my lap, figured, in my head, I'm visualizing this, right? So I'm writing the letter, but I'm also visualizing, like, taking her on my lap and holding her and just reassuring her, like, everything's okay. You're okay. You're safe, right? Look, I'm all grown up. Like, you made it. We got it. We got this.
Yeah.
And, that was one of the examples of a practice. And they're just that simple. And there are other ones too. I share like a body check in here, which is just okay. So the reason why I talk about how the body holds all of our healing is because every memory, every story, everything is right here in this lifetime, and if you believe in this, previous lifetimes, right?
Mhm.
Our ancestry, right? Our lineage. Sometimes that outside interference isn't even yours, because it's like something your great great grandmother went through that's been passed down and passed down and passed down. And now you have an opportunity to heal it. A lot of us who are here right now are dealing with exactly that kind of stuff, right? We
Yeah.
have tools available to us that are great, that our ancestors may or may not have, right? As well as we are returning to original ways of knowing, right? Pre outside interference. Okay. We have these original ways of knowing that we're, invited to rekindle, reignite, get back in touch with. And it's all right here. It's all like, we don't have to look any further than our own bodies in terms of what's going on? Like, how many of us are on speaking terms with our bodies? Right? Like, that was, so it's, so, like, one of the practices that I offer, and this just came out of, like, as I was working with clients and I would see, I saw it as a dance teacher when I would see where my students, like, hundreds of women came through my classes, and I would see where they would hold their stories, right? We might call it tension, we might call it stress. I call it, like, the stories that we hold in the body. I think of it as a bound energy, right? And what happens when you release it? Like, all that energy just becomes available to you again so
Mm.
that you can use it to do stuff that you actually wanna do, not remember something that hurt you 10 years ago, or that, you know what I mean? Like, it's profound, it's profound. So, the body check is really simple. I noticed a lot of us hold tension right here. Yeah, right around the mouth and in the jaw. In fact, I have a quick story. I was, at a martial arts studio, and I was kind of pitching the lady who was running it, like, "Oh, I'd love to do, kind of a workshop here or something." And I was still trying to figure out what I do. I mean, it's an ever, as you know, Ibnav, I love that you were like, every time I introduce myself, it's something else because, like, yeah, we're constantly evolving, It's like, today, I'm a guest on your podcast. I don't know what I'm gonna be this afternoon, but
Yeah.
that day, I was in this martial arts gym and, or studio, I should say, and I was kind of pitching a workshop to the owner. And I was like, "Yeah, I'm an intuitive, and I kind of like, I can." I got very good at sort of like, seeing what people were carrying in their bodies, and I'm an intuitive, so I would hit on something, right? And, and she was like, "Yeah, okay, read me," right? And she walks around, and right away, I noticed her jaw, but I was like, I was, like, nervous to just jump right in there because it felt very tender.
Mm.
So, we talked about her walk. I was like, "Oh, I noticed that you hold yourself a certain way." A lot of teachers in movement, practices will, like, hold themselves almost like, "I must be perfect all of the time because I am a teacher and people are looking at me," right? So there was
Mm.
that. We talked about that and got her to loosen up a little bit. And there were a couple other little things. And then finally I was like, "Oh," because I was like, "Oh, this takes courage," And I was like, "What's going on right here? Like, you look like the corners of her mouth just ever so slightly turned down." Right? And I was just looking, I was like, "It feels like grief, like, it feels like sadness." She just burst into tears. Now, here's this, like, hardcore martial arts lady, okay? Like, she could definitely take me down, like, there's no question. And she just, like, burst into tears and told me this story of unrequited love that she'd just been sitting on. And I was like, "Honey, it's all right here." But it allowed her, just even expressing it, being witnessed in that, allowed her to release some of that tightness, right? So we'll carry stuff,
Mm.
around our mouths and around our jaws. And so the body check is one, just like checking in these certain spots to see, like, am I carrying anything there? And then, like, just maybe sending a little, infusion, a little relaxation to that spot. So
Mm.
first you check in, and then, like, how can we, like, bring some relaxation? So my, back in the day, I was a flautist as well, and one of the things my flute teacher taught me was, this is very attractive. You know how horses do that, like, with their mouths? Super sexy. Oh my god, we all wanna do this. But one of the ways that you can tell if you're carrying tension there, if you can't do that, if you're like, it
Mm.
means you're holding tight, right? Um, but even just like I just did, like, puff up your cheeks, make silly faces, right? This is a great way, like, look at kids, this is what kids do. They're like, ah, you know, just make silly faces, give yourself a little cheek and jaw massage. Open, yawn, maybe. Right? Just to bring some circulation, bring some movement. It's so simple, but
Mm.
doesn't that feel better already? Did you do any of that with me? No, you were just watching,
I was
giggling.
just enjoying what you were doing.
You're like, "You go ahead, Charisse. That looks great on you." Yeah. Well, that's perfect because laughter is also another way. So if you
Yeah.
did not feel comfortable doing any of those things with me, you can just laugh at me and that will have the grit that like my work here is done. Okay. So that's step one is like, the mouth and the jaws. The next place that you want to check, probably unsurprising, are shoulders, right?
Mm.
So many of us are carrying more than what is actually ours, right? So many of us, like we take responsibility for other people, for their choices, when all we can be responsible for are our own choices, right? So you want to check in here. And it's like, it's simple. You know what I mean? Like, are your shoulders here or are they relaxed, right? And an easy way to find out is to like bring your shoulders all the way up, like you're trying to touch your ear.
Okay,
Uh,
I'll do it.
yeah, you're gonna this time you're gonna do it with me. I didn't okay. And then let them go, right? Yeah. Now, did you notice, are they lower than they were before? Mine definitely are. Right? So, like, an easy way to see if you're holding any tension, well, one, when you go to the massage therapist, they go, "Whoa, what are you doing? Your shoulders are rock hard," right? But also, like, when you do this, like, scrunch it up, like, contract, 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 and then you, like, release it, it you can, just check, like, before, after. You'll be able to notice if there's a difference. You can just roll them around, right? This is totally a belly dance thing, but just roll your shoulders around. You can do them both at the same time, both at the back. This is all just about bringing fluid, bringing lubrication to the joints, right? We want to stay in flow. How do you stay in flow? You keep your joints lubricated. I like to say a well lubricated woman is a powerful thing. Right? So good. It's so, so good for us because um, everything translates. How we hold the body translates, right? So we want to be in flow. You want to
Mm.
be in flow in your body. Where am I stuck? Where am I stiff? Right? Where am I holding tightness that I don't need to hold tightness? Right? So there's 4 spots to the body check. 1, 2. The third one, everybody's favorite, is the belly. Yay! And there was much rejoicing. Okay, so most of us walk around like, like either sucking it in. I mean, I'm not saying, okay, let me rephrase. You don't want to walk around like completely like slumped over, right? We obviously we need some muscular tension around our abdominals because that's what holds us up, right? And we're not walking around like rag dolls. But I would say, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say particularly for women, because, okay, so I taught belly dance, right? And when I would teach the belly roll, let me see if you can see what I'm doing. When I would teach the belly roll, which is like this, like out and in. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah,
Out
yeah.
and in, right?
Mhm.
So I still got it. Anyway, so what's funny is you tell a guy to do that, and he's like, eh, like, "Whoa," like they're just like, beer belly, I own it. And then I would teach women and they'd be like, I can't because they're already here. They're already
Mm.
like sucking it in, like they're in a bikini on the beach and there's like a cute guy and they're like, or girl, you know what I mean? And they're like, hi, you know. There's also the other part of that is our belly is that's our vulnerable underbelly, right? So we're used to kind of holding it with a little tension, like protection, self protection. So, what I like to do, and sometimes we do, sometimes you are walking into a situation where you need a little extra protection, a little extra security.
Mhm.
But what I like to do at least a couple times a day is just like let the belly go and really let it relax. And when you do, you'll realize how rarely we do this, right? It's like, oh, think of it as like before Thanksgiving dinner, after Thanksgiving dinner, like just, like whatever works, whatever is your favorite big meal, like just like just feel the relaxation in that and the energy that gets released. Because I don't know if you're feeling, like, are you feeling any of this? Like, what happens when we start to like open up some of these spots? It's like now
Yeah, I
this energy running through the body. Yeah. Yeah. And
yeah,
then the fourth spot are the hips, which I don't have enough space on the screen to show that right now. But, this is just extra credit, but we do hold a lot of tension in our hips as well. That's where a lot of our trauma can live, a lot of our messages about our bodies can live in our hips. And, so one of the things that I would often do, like when I would do workshops or even just going and speaking, is I would just have everyone walk around the room and then I would invite them to sashay, like just to move their hips a little bit, right? It's not true of every culture, but in here in the Western world, or if you like grew up in like European countries, it's different if you're like Latina or you grew up in like, South America, whatever, like, or, in the continent of Africa, you're going to be much more comfortable moving your hips. But like, here in North America, which is where I'm based, Europe, it like, you don't move your hips.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
There's definitely some.
yeah, there's some
Yeah,
cultural stuff around that. I talk about it a lot in my book because we've been taught that, like, only people of a certain whatever move their hips. And I'm not saying that we got to get all Marilyn Monroe, Jessica Rabbit about it. It's just about allowing the body to move in a way that it wants to move. Well, like it's like, where am I holding that I don't need to be holding? Right? It's like if we wanted to put it in a nutshell. And what I find is when we do that, it allows the energy to move through the body. The body naturally wants to be whole and healed and healthy and in flow and moving. I mean, we are whatever giant percentage water. So it's our natural state to be in flow. And so I just found that it sounds so simple, but when we find these like tight places and just allow them, not like force them, not like I got to do some, you know, intense yoga stretch, right? Like it doesn't have to be like that. Sometimes that can actually do the opposite. If you're like active stretching is a bit of a misnomer. You're not actually relaxed. The muscles cannot stretch if they are also being contracted at the same time. It's just the way the body works. So yeah.
so I want to, you mentioned a few different things, and I want to go back
Yeah.
to some of the wisdom that you've collected throughout the years, since you figured all of this out, and since you started practicing for yourself. So you mentioned that you did a lot of your own healing. Now you mentioned trauma healing, but I'm wondering, you know, because really our listeners, they there's people, suffering from everything and anything, really. There's physical trauma, there's emotional trauma, spiritual trauma, all of that.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we are saying is that, there's this holding back, holding in the body, not releasing, not being in flow.
Yeah.
And like we said before, when we're thinking about the stories and the thinking, the fears that people constantly
Mhm.
having, then we can see them as, they're stuck, because
Right.
they're always going back to the same kind of thing, even if it's more subconscious than conscious.
Mm.
And how do we move past that? How do we start releasing? Is it really that if you do this kind of energetic, release that you just described, is that one thing, or how what
Yeah.
should people consider?
Yeah, that is one thing. Well, this is what I would say is follow the breadcrumbs. So we are each different. So okay, let me back up by saying that I believe that every physical ailment actually has an energetic component. I
Mm,
think that everything is spiritual, because that's just how it's played out in my life. Like, so for example, when I wrote that letter to my young self, it was because I would have this really weird pain in my chest. Um, that started when I was I mean, I'd had it for as long as I could remember, and all the way in through college, and where it would be like I would just be breathing 1 minute, and then the next minute it would feel like my lungs would catch,
mm,
for lack of a better term, and in order to breathe, I would have to rip through that catch, and it was very painful and scary, and so I would try to avoid it whenever I was like, "No, it's happening again." So I would feel like I literally felt like a frog pressed under glass because I would be trying not to breathe, if that pain came up. And I just remember that letter to myself came out of, like, me just I went to see a doctor, they didn't know what it was, or blah, 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 you know what I mean? And it was like, so I
mm,
did some journaling, and I was like, "What is this about?" And I asked the pain, I asked my which, interestingly enough, right over my heart, right? And, I got this visual of a little girl, like, kinda all balled up, and I was like, "Alright," and I just sensed it was me, and why I then wrote that letter, and what I can tell you is after I did that practice, I never had that pain again. Like, it went away, and
mm.
it didn't come back. And, y y I so what I meant by the breadcrumbs, this like, that journal prompt, for example, came out of my different experiences, like hearing about people writing a letter to their you know what I mean? I didn't make that up, right?
Mm,
But, like, hearing people talk about it, noticing what's in your field, because here's my firm belief is that, like, part of you absolutely knows how to heal. The greater part of you, in fact, right? Because we're so much more than what meets the eye, right? We're this
mhm,
infinite. We're just this, like, infinite soul physically focused in the body, right? So, it can be as simple as, like, starting to ask the questions like, "What is this about?" Like, and getting on speaking terms with the body, right? So that it can start to give you some answers. And for everyone, it's going to be different. Maybe for you, it'll be, writing, automatic writing, even writing with the left hand. And, like, say, like, ask a question with let's say your dominant hand, right? You ask a question with your dominant hand, and then you put the writing implement in your non-dominant hand, and you see what comes out. I've had very interesting stuff because it taps another part of the brain, right?
mm,
That might be more in touch with what that part is trying to tell you. I've had other healings of physical pains that came out of, again, following the breadcrumbs, where one thread took me through. I was starting to talk to people about ancestral healing, and they were talking about, different ancestors kind of coming in with you, or being, inhabiting different parts of your body. It got pretty wild. I was like, that's interesting, and
mhm.
yet it was what I needed for that pain. But I think too that there is no one size fits all. Each one of us is unique. We each have our own stories.
But do
And
you
we'll get those clues on what to do. I'm sorry, go on.
no, I was just wondering, do you think
Mm,
if you're not intuitive in this way,
yeah.
if you ask your body, well, what do you mean? What does that mean? Where did this come from? And you're not coming, you're coming out blank, basically.
Yeah.
Do you feel that's a hindrance to your healing? Do you need to be in touch with your inner?
Nope. And like, this is because my like, it's so interesting. My intuition has developed over the years so that it's now that I can kind of like get a sense right away. But it's so interesting. I had a feeling to bring a pendulum to this interview, and I didn't know why, and now I know why.
Mhm.
Because so when I talk about, kind of tapping into that part of us that knows already, it's the part that's connected with everything. This is what I think of when I talk about like original ways of knowing. And so we have ways of accessing that without necessarily like you don't have to be psychic. You know what I mean? You don't have to be a clairaudient or a clear any of those things.
Mm.
Um, and like I happen to be a clairsentient, so I'll feel things in my body, right?
Mm.
So some of it, this is what I would say is most likely you do have some gift, right? And it may just be a varying percentages, and then it's like kind of tapping into it and practicing and like doing little things, right? But you can also dowse, right? So like this is really common. You can use a pendulum. There are other tools as well. Some people use like body testing, right? Which, especially in the natural healing world, a lot of people have heard of this, right? It's like, like holding that arm up and like, yes is I can hold it. No is like, pew, it'll go like that, right? Same
Yeah,
thing with like, you can do
muscle
that.
testing. I
Yeah,
use that.
muscle testing, right? Muscle
I use
testing
that.
is a great way to connect.
Mm.
You can also learn how to dowse. You can also learn how to use a pendulum, right? So the first thing that I always do is I make sure am I in alignment with my heart's truth, right? Because this is where your truth is always. So I look to see what's my net, my yes. My yes is clockwise. Does it stay when I take my hand off my heart? Yes. So that's how I know that I'm in alignment. Now I can douse for whatever I want, right? I'm getting that this pain is about, right? Like, it's so interesting. Like, it's so fascinating to me how this works. How it works, it's like the age old question, right? Is it like the body sending tiny little muscle impulses into the pendulum? Is the pendulum tapping into that, infinite field connecting all of us? Yes to all of the above, right? It's like, you know, but this would be there are absolutely tools available to us that we can use to access what our body wants to tell us, what our guidance wants to tell us, and so you can start with that. And it's, you just start. And what I would say is in any of these things, because I know it can sound pretty like, well, that's nice for you, Charisse. Like you were able to look at this karate teacher and look at her face and be like, grief. And she went, ah, I'm like, "Oh, I can't do that." But we all start somewhere. I started playing around with the pendulum when I was a little kid, not knowing what I was doing at all.
Mhm.
Now I know better, right? But um, we can all develop this, you know, these skills, and also just like it just starts, but starts small, is what I would say. Right. This is what I always advise people with all of this stuff. If this is kind of sounding like a little out there, then start with the little decisions. Start with the little questions. Like don't start with the biggest question in your life right now. Like that is not, if this is your first time picking up a pendulum, don't be like, okay, should I, like leave everything and start my life in a new place? Don't ask that question. Start with
Yeah.
something simple like, do I want strawberries right now? Nope. That'd be a no. Do I want blueberries? Right? Start with something simple. Because I also
Yeah.
too, I also teach, if a pendulum feels like not your jam, muscle testing is another one, but really easy is like, if you're like talking about yes and no, right? It's just asking your body. You can be standing or seated like I am now, like just really seated and centered. And let's say like, is my name Charisse? Right? Or something that the answer is yes to, and feel how your
Yeah.
body responds. We have a tendency to lean forward for yes, and we have a tendency to lean away for no, right? Body language 101, right? Like if you like someone, you're going to lean in toward them. If you don't like someone or you don't feel quite safe in them, you're going to like, lean away. Like, it's something that, any body language expert will tell you. But it's something that we can tap in as well of just like, is this a yes or a no? And then start to pay attention. What are the feelings in my body? Right? We all we all have it. Like, it doesn't have to be I'm not one of these people that was like born seeing stuff from I mean, I have great I think it's a tremendous gift, also kind of a lot for,
Yeah.
the young people that I've talked to where they've kind of come in with those gifts. They were like, "Yeah, I was seeing things when I was 4." You know? And, so
But I think the interesting thing is that basically, what I'm hearing you say is that your body is wise. Your body
yeah,
does know. I believe 100% that our subconscious mind, our unconscious mind has all the answers. And
yeah,
basically, what you're saying is that you don't have to guess. You can find out. You can ask the questions, and you can use whatever methods to
yeah,
bring up the answers. And I love that. And especially in my work with people that are suffering from chronic pain and illnesses,
yeah,
there is that a lot of the time. It really starts you know, with the fears and why me and why now and what to do with it. And then there's going to the doctors and finding out that, maybe there's a diagnosis or maybe there is no diagnosis, but
right.
it's a lot of fear based. And
Yeah,
I like what you're saying is that actually when you calm yourself down and you're, opening that conversation, you can find answers that they're just there and not very deep and not very far away actually.
yeah,
And find your own way to ask the question, and then get out of your head fast enough so you can
yeah,
trust what you're
right?
hearing.
Well, and it's just really just recognizing when it's like the chatter and not us. And that can take some time. I mean, my chatter was like definitely front and center for decades before I figured this out. You know what I mean? And I really believed it. I believed all the awful things that you
Yeah.
know chatter voice was telling me, and it was very fear based. Right? This is what's really cool. Like, like that truth being in our heart. It's love based. Right? This is like the
Yeah.
opposite of fear. But I moved to share a story, like, the last time I went to see my general practitioner, my regular doctor, Western medicine based, like, right? I go in and she was like, we have our regular checkup, this, that, and the other, and we get to the end and she's just like, "Charisse, what do you do? Because your numbers are great." Like, you know? And I
Yeah.
was like, "Well, thank you." I mean, like, whatever. Thanks, and I thought about it, and the no and the what came forward was like, well, I I've kind of, like, made it my job to, like, ground and center through what works for me: meditation, prayer, connecting with nature, right? Um Some journaling, some peaceful time, and it sounds so simple and easy, and it's not gonna be the same for everyone. I was not a natural meditator, by the way, let me just put that out too. Like, the first times people were like, "You should really meditate," I was like, "That's nice." I'm a dancer. I do moving meditation. I was so, like, anti-meditation, and then, like, I actually tried it, and I was like, "Oh, now I get it. It's different." And it doesn't have to be like, for me, that meditation might be in a minute in bed before I get out of bed. Like, what? It does not have to be 3 hours under a Bodhi tree when the stars are aligned. You know what I mean? Like, on the perfect, like, meditating cushion. No, it's like I set the tone of my day very intentionally before I hop out of bed, because I used to, like, hear the alarm, right? I don't even use an alarm most days anymore, but, back in the day, I would hear the alarm, and, like, immediately, it would be like, it would put this sense of panic in my body, "Awesome,"
Yeah.
and, and I would spring out of bed, and I would just start racing into, like, "I've got to do this, and I've gotta do that, and I've gotta do this, and I've gotta do that," and I have just switched those habits, I mean, we have so much power, we have so much control. And I was like, gosh, I really don't like starting my day that way. And so I refashioned it where I just started it, it took some time for me to like make it a habit and do it all the time. And now it's like I do that before I get out of bed. Even if it's just 5 seconds, What is time? Time is a construct anyway, right? So, just taking
Definitely.
that moment yeah, like, I know, quantum physics, what? But seriously, it does not take long, like, it does not have to be this long, big deal, it can just be like, because what that does, before you get out of bed, it sends this message to your body, "I have more than enough time,"
Yeah.
right? Instead of that,
Well,
'cause the rushing is, like, fear-based, and it's just unhooking, it's just anywhere that there's fear in your life, unhooking it, because something that I really realized, like, really got and this is very recent actually, is that fear is not natural. I mean, unless yeah, okay, if there's, like, a saber-toothed tiger bearing down on you, that adrenaline rush, yes, that is accurate, but even that is like, I gotta run. I gotta
it's
get out there.
action
It's
based.
not even necessarily fear. It's just like survival instinct.
Yeah.
Fear, as far as I can tell, is all outside programming, input, blah, 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 blah. And we always have this choice of like, what what would love say to that? I mean, even when you're getting that diagnosis, when you're getting that, it's like check in. Is this true? You know?
I love that you're saying that. I mean, I say exactly the same thing, and I always say that yeah, fear is definitely a product of our negative mind, but also that if we listened slightly differently, we can also get a lot of wisdom from that. So you
Right.
definitely have a choice of how to move forward with that.
Yeah.
Uh, it's nearly time for us to
Mhm.
finish for today.
Yeah.
I love everything that you say. When people feel stuck, it's like they're carrying, yeah, the stress and carrying in the body, like you said, but also it's this extra weight on the shoulders that it's like
Mm.
getting them in a loop. But actually, if we are able to come at it from a different perspective and say, actually, I can trust my body, I can ask it for the answers, I can just come up from a perspective that there are answers that I haven't found yet, and allow yourself to really, you know, I don't know, kind of flow into a new kind of energy.
Yeah.
Um, I guess that's my summarizing of some of the things that you said today. But before we leave, what message would you like to leave our listeners with?
Hmm. If there's one thing I would love you to remember, it's that you know so much more than you think you do.
Yeah,
Your body is your wisest partner on this journey. Your body will never betray you. Your body will never lie to you, right? Your body wants only what is best for you.
yeah.
And, yeah, that would be it. Trust yourself. Trust yourself. You got this. You know this. Yeah.
I really like this message. Especially I was just thinking back to one of my clients. She was telling me that she was walking with someone, and she has this kind of tremors, and I guess the practitioner was a little bit tired of things not changing or something. So she told my now client, she said, um, I checked, I muscle tested, and your subconscious mind said that it wants you to live, to live with these tremors. It's like in your higher good to live with it. And I remember I was mortified. I was
What?
like, please, please don't, please never listen to someone saying that.
Let's check this right now, right?
Oh God, yes,
Was
the
that
muscles.
right? Look, it's already saying I haven't even finished formulating the question. That's my no. right?
It's an
And she
absolute love.
probably felt it in her body, but this is you know what? So let me add a little extra credit, like piece of knowledge as a dance teacher, right?
Mm,
What I would always tell my students, if I am asking you to do something that does not feel right for your body, do not do it.
mm,
You are like there's only one sovereign of your body, and that is you. Okay?
yeah,
And we know best. We know best. I remember I had a dear friend who was diagnosed with colon cancer. This was years ago, and she's now on the other side. And they literally told her, like, pack your bags, right? Like, wrap things up. And I was like, I was like, the arrogance what,
mm,
what she, oh, you read her, you scanned her barcode on the bottom of her
mm,
heel? How do you know that? How do you know that? And, she was with us, bless her, for another year plus and surrounded by love and doing the things that she enjoyed and loved. And it was because she did not listen to, and trusted and,
mm,
yeah, it was major what she was dealing with. And, but we, ah, ah, yeah,
yeah,
no, your intuition is 100%. Like, that was the practitioner speaking for their own, like, they felt it's interesting. They felt responsible for her results, which as a practitioner, you cannot do. You can give the best guidance, you can give the best, but you cannot make things happen for people because hello, free will. I mean, even
yeah.
God doesn't trespass free will, right? So,
I was just happy that
yeah.
I was able to say to her, "Hey, it's
Yeah.
not that. Don't even." But yes,
Mm.
there was so much. This, yeah. I was like, no, please, no, just don't listen, don't listen.
Yeah, thankfully that she had you. What a wise woman that she had this other practitioner, but she also had you in her ear going, question that.
Oh
That
God,
doesn't feel right to me. That immediately
yes,
didn't feel right, to
yes.
me."
It's
And it probably didn't feel right to her, right? Like, this,
no,
like,
it isn't.
internal compass, as you get used to tapping into it, it's like we can tell. We know what a full body yes feels like, and we know what a no feels like,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
Tap into that.
Yeah. Oh, thank you
Very good.
so much for this
Thank
time
you.
today, Einav. It was such a pleasure. Thank you for listening. Thank you for all of your excellent, questions and insights. I love healing conversations. I love what you're bringing forth in the world. It's so valuable. And it was really such an honor to be here with you.
Thank you. It was really wonderful to have you here, and I'm sure that the listeners will take a lot from that. And of course, anyone interested in getting in touch with Charisse or finding out more, following her on social media, please do. All of the information will be in the show notes. And yeah, let's have this conversation. Exactly. Charisse, thank you so much.